Welcome everyone. This is the second of our Crusader Coffee series for prospective students and also for the incoming class of 2024. My name is Bill Leonard. I've hopefully met a lot of you already. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management, and we're going to be hearing from Beth Walter, who is our Director of College Counseling. So I will turn it over to Beth to do her presentation, and then at the end,
I think we lost Billy. So Beth, you wanna
Okay.
just get going because
Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure Bill will pop back on. Technical difficulties tend to happen as we're using Zoom. So thank you all for coming tonight. I'm going to just explain a little bit about the college counseling program at Bergen Catholic and answer any questions that you might have specifically related to what we do here. We have a very unique program that is both engaging and exciting. I think the kids really love being able to have both a guidance counselor and a college counselor when they enter Bergen Catholic. We make a really concerted effort to work together as a guidance department and a college counseling department to make sure that students are put on the right path for the college application process starting in 9th grade. So I know that some people may say that that is a little bit much and that kids can get overwhelmed by the process at 14 of being introduced to the concept of going to college. And I agree with that somewhat. However, I think that it's very important that kids are doing everything that they can to prepare themselves for that junior year when it comes time to actually choosing a list of schools to apply to. So we do that in a couple of different ways. The approaches are student-focused, parent-focused, and then obviously on the curriculum that we're using. So in terms of the students, starting off freshman year, like I said, the students are introduced to their guidance counselor who handles everything that a normal guidance counselor would handle. So academics, social and emotional well-being, course placements, and they also are very, very helpful in introducing things like building a resume, utilizing a system called Naviance, which is a student management system that allows kids to see what colleges students with the same kind of background that they have may have gone to, and to look at historically over, the amount of years where they've gone and what they've done and how they've achieved those things. So that happens right away in freshman year after they're acclimated to, the school and to their friends and to the sports and clubs and things that they might be doing. The guidance counselors are in the classroom along with under my guidance to give them, the opportunity to build a resume, to go on Naviance and become familiar with what they're looking at. So that's step one. We have the opportunity to reach parents through the parent seminars by allowing you to come in as freshman parents to hear about what you should be doing to help support your child through this process. So whether that means having them engage in a summer program for academics, joining clubs and sports, community service, finding the thing that I like to call the X factor, the one thing about your child that makes them special. So by the time they are ready to apply to college, they have everything that they need. And it's really just at that point, you're pushing a button. You've done all of your homework. You've done all of your prep work. And you really, at that point, don't have anything else to worry about because you've done everything that you can to lead up to that point. Then comes our junior year, when everything around the Christmas time of your junior year is focused to the student in terms of the college application search process. So the search process starts first, and that is in the spring of the junior year. And then we shift into the application process in the summer and the fall of the student's senior year. So the freshman and sophomore year are really foundation and building years, whereas the junior and then senior year are the actual search and application process part of all of this. But it does go hand in hand. And like I said, I am constantly in contact with each of the boys' guidance counselors to have a really good idea as to what classes the boys are taking. Are they appropriately placed? Counselors will call me and say, hey, this student really wants to be an engineer. Can you tell me what classes they should be taking? And so that's how we look at those type of things. We're all kind of in it together, and we're looking to make sure that the plan is comprehensive and well thought out as possible, and that the students are as prepared as they possibly can be. So I'm going to just stop there, and I'm going to let Billy, I know he was going to ask some questions that people might be wanting to know. Billy, did you want to ask any questions? I think we lost Billy.
Yeah, Billy's been he's been having some trouble. He's been on from his phone, so I would think you may be open to other questions or waiting for him to.
Okay, that's fine. Does anybody have any specific questions for us? I know that it's been shared with everyone, the college placement list of all of the schools that we have students that have been accepted to, so you can kind of take a look at that. That's available for you. So if anybody has any questions about that, certainly I'd be happy to answer. We do very, very well at the college, at the Catholic schools, and certainly have good relationships with a lot of the schools that you might think, like the Boston Colleges and the Fordhams, and the Villanovas, the Notre Dames, the Georgetowns. So if anybody has any specific questions kind of about what that looks like, the college process itself, I'd be happy to answer those. Any questions?
I'll ask a question.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
I'm back. I tried
Okay.
it on my phone. It's working. So can you tell us a little bit about maybe a time where you've helped a student get into a school that maybe they were on the wait list, and you've been able to use your personal relationships with, I'll brag for you. Beth Walter has incredible relationships with all of the major players in college admissions. So she is on a relationship where she can, pick up the phone, ask about specific student status. And when you couple her relationships with the Bergen Catholic reputation, she really has been able to help students get into schools where maybe they were right on the edge of wait lists or maybe not getting in. So can you talk about maybe a time where you've been able to pick up the phone and help a student?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, with how competitive the college landscape is right now, it's obviously really important to note that, even the best of students are having a hard time getting accepted to some of the top tier schools. So this year specifically, before the virus kind of spread and took over, I was invited as one of 27 counselors in the United States to go out to California to visit UCLA, Loyola University, Loyola Marymount University, and USC, so the University of Southern California. And I spent 4 days out there with the counselors and the staff, the admissions staff from those 3 schools, getting to know them and getting to know the schools and things like that, which was really great. And upon coming back, I think it really did help our students because we had, 3, 4, and 3 kids get into schools there that generally, kids on the East Coast have a hard time getting into. So our results were actually very, very positive. And not that I think our kids weren't certainly worthy of getting accepted to those schools, but I know that the relationships do matter. And so those are the kinds of trips that, I engage in and look to go on in order to strengthen those relationships. I had two boys that were waitlisted at Fordham this year, and they definitely were way below the normal GPA and test score that Fordham would take. And so, weekly, I just kind of I have been sending emails and making phone calls. And finally this week was given a phone call back from the enrollment management department letting me know that they did pull both boys off the wait list, and they were both of those boys' first choices. So that's always really exciting because I think even the boys might not know that things are going on behind the scenes. It's important to know that those relationships and being able to pick up the phone or send an email does help, and it certainly ends up helping us in terms of our overall college placement. I'll also say that, when I look at a class of 155 kids, let's just say, I believe that there's not just one school for every single student. And I try to guide the boys in the best way so that when we look at the picture of where kids are getting in, you'll see that it looks like almost every of the top tier schools that it's strategically placed in some manner, which is true to some extent. I think that it really does make sense if you know a student really well and you know that they're the best candidate for Brown and that they have the best shot at getting into a school like Brown, then that's going to be where I'm going to advise them to, say, use their early decision versus their chances might be less at Columbia, but I know that someone else in the class might have a better shot at Columbia. So I'm looking at getting each student into the best school that they possibly can get into. And we talk strategy by the time senior year comes about what makes their profile look the most attractive on paper and how do we go about getting you into the school of your dreams and doing everything that you possibly can in order to get you to that point.
And with Fordham, isn't the director of admissions or associate director of admissions a Bergen Catholic grad as well?
Actually, the VP of enrollment management is a Fordham grad, yes. And he's also very, very involved with Bergen Catholic. And so, certainly we're very, very friendly. So that makes for an easier transition, certainly when you're looking to, it's a trust factor, when you can call someone and say, hey, listen, I can vouch for this young man coming there. I think he will do really well and he will accentuate the program at Fordham. And us having a relationship, that's something that he really, I think, is going to, listen to and be advised with. Any other
questions?
I have a question here from someone that says, is the priority getting the student into the best school or the right fit for them? And how do you manage getting students into that? So I think that it really depends on what the student wants. Certainly when we develop a list of schools, we're looking at the school that is the best fit for that student. So if the student, has a list of 12 schools, I always advise them to look at the reach schools that are going to be schools that might be a little bit above where traditionally their SAT or ACT and GPA is. And then schools that are going to be in the middle, which I know they're going to do well at in terms of the admissions process. And then maybe the safety schools on the bottom, one or two of them are going to be schools that they're going to get a significant amount of money in terms of scholarships, and that they would also be happy at. I encouraged all of the boys to apply as high as they wish, as long as they have as many to counteract on the bottom half of the list. So what I want to see is success on the top and then also success on the bottom in terms of scholarship money. So again, our kids are getting into great schools, that's for sure. But again, the decision-making process, really, I have little to do with. My involvement really is in the beginning of the process. I certainly counsel families when they get their acceptances back and we are looking at comparing financial aid packages, what makes the most fiscal sense. But at the end of the day, it's really a family decision and the boys' decision as to where they feel that they fit best and, what's going to meet their needs. Oh, I have another question. Okay. So my son is not an athlete. How many students are getting non-athletic scholarships? Well, I can answer that question because I just did the scholarships this year. And so as of right now, we're at $30.5 million in terms of overall scholarships. So that's merit-based scholarships, that's academic scholarships, that's athletic scholarships. And only $10 million of that, actually less than that, about 8.9 million came from athletic scholarships. The rest were all academic scholarships. So, our students do really well in terms of the academic scholarships. So, the merit coming in is pretty outstanding. I would say of the students who applied this year, I'll just use Loyola University of Maryland. The average scholarship package was $27,000 for each of our students coming out of Bergen. So we have 3 students who are actually attending Loyola, but the scholarships that they were awarded was anywhere between $20,000 and $32,000 a year in academic scholarships. So over 4 years, that's quite a bit of money. Obviously, you're looking at a school that starts at 60, so that $30,000 can bring it down, to the price of a public school.
And what percentage of our students got, for the most recent numbers, what percentage of our students received at least one merit-based scholarship?
86%. So, and if you take that into consideration, that 86%, obviously we have students who, we have 4 students in this current class who will actually be attending a gap year for either for prep school reasons or are taking a gap year for personal reasons. So you take 4 kids out of the mix already. And then you have other kids who might have applied, like, let's just say early decision to a school like Boston College, but their parents don't qualify for any financial aid based on their financial situation. So they would be getting nothing because they only applied to one school, and they would be paying a full boat really to go to, like, let's just say a Boston College. So that's how that 86%, but generally anybody who's applying to more than one school is getting some sort of aid from somewhere. Okay, hold on. I have some questions here. Okay, let's see. How many students? Okay, what tier 1 schools that are not Catholic favor BC students? So in terms of, I can't say for sure what non-Catholic schools favor us, but I know that I personally have very deep relationships with a lot of non-Catholic schools from doing this for 20 years. Bergen Catholic has a good reputation, academically, certainly athletically, but our academics are well known. We had a student go to Duke last year on a full scholarship. He actually received the Rubenstein Scholarship, which is one of the most distinguished scholarships in all of Duke's history in terms of what they offer. So that's a full ride, room and board, summer programs, and he was not an athlete. He was a student who was very involved at Bergen in other things. He was on the mock trial team. He participated in a lot of charity work, was involved in the church, just a great kid. And he did very, very well. He also was accepted to Cornell and Brown. So, I think there's a place for everybody at Bergen. Yes, athletes certainly do well, but our kids that aren't athletes are doing really well too. So I think, I call Bergen like the perfect storm. It really has the best of all angles. We have that academic offering, and then we have, sort of a little bit of everything else for kids. So I find that it's really a good fit for the majority of students that I work with. Okay, I have another one here. As you build your resume in Naviance, what are the colleges looking for as far as activities, community service? So that question is a good question. When you're looking at a resume, obviously you want to see a student who has, a lot of one thing. It used to be historically when you were looking at, the college process, people would say, oh, you need to be really well-rounded and you want to have things in every area. And while that's still somewhat true, I think that when colleges are looking at building a community, they're really looking at saying, hey, what is this student going to come and offer to us that is going to make this a more unique and interesting place? So certainly the student who is the best oboe player in all of Bergen County is going to have something that, someone who just played in a band isn't going to have. So when you're looking at it, it's like looking to try to find what are you the best at, and finding, again, your X factor. You certainly, if you're looking at a school like a Notre Dame or a Georgetown, those types of schools love to see kids who are involved in their church and their community because that's part of their mission. So I think that when you're looking at the type of school that is a good fit for you, you want to say, okay, like, is this school a good fit for me, and am I a good fit for them? And it's that reciprocal relationship. So looking to see where it makes the most sense for you to go based on your interests, and do they have what you're looking for? So it's really that it has to be that reciprocal relationship in order for it to be that quote unquote good fit. What's the class size of the class of 2020? Our class was 153 this year. Do you have an NCAA coordinator that works with athletes to obtain athletic scholarships? So that's a really good question. So yes, we do. Actually, Vito Campanile, who is our head football coach, works in tandem with me to work on all of those types of issues. So in terms of the scholarships and things like that, I do all of the academic parts of that process. So I do the academic pre-reads. So, if Stanford is interested in one of our athletes, the Stanford recruiting coach may call me after he speaks with Vito about a kid that he's interested in, after the coach has come to the school and said, hey, I'm really interested in so-and-so, and has that sort of unofficial visit at the school, and they may or may not have asked the student to come for an official visit. The academic piece goes through me. So I will sit with every prospective athlete and their parents and the coach, and we will go over what kind of athlete the student is. Are they going to be a student athlete at the D1 level, the D2 level, or the D3 level? And we'll talk about all of those opportunities to see where it makes the most sense for the student to be looking. So if the student is a D1 athlete, you're going to know that pretty early on, because the schools are going to be coming looking for you and be, offering things out. The D3 process is a little bit different, where, you may be able to get into a better caliber school based on your athletic ability. But, time and time again, I am kind of hopefully the voice of reason to sort of look at all of the options and come up with a plan that makes the most sense. Because again, we want to give you the best opportunity in terms of college placement that you can have. And that's what this really comes down to, is if sports can help you, great. There might be an opportunity where kids could go to, like, let's just say a D2 school to play soccer, but academically those schools are, not maybe as challenging as a school that they could get into from an academic point of view. Well, then we would say, well, is that really the best thing in terms of my overall future? Is it more important for me to play D2 soccer at a school that, may be less than what I'm looking for, or do I go academically where it makes the most sense? So I think that's a conversation that certainly we have for each student, and it's obviously, a case by case basis, but I have those quite regularly, and we involve everybody in the process, and those start pretty early on for people who really know what they want, or people who have coaches that have been in contact.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you find that, what have you found during this situation? How has it affected the college process? I mean, I have a daughter that's a junior, so she's in that mess right now of SATs being canceled and everything else. But how do you think it'll affect, like, acceptances going forward? Like, will the classes be kind of back by a year because a lot of kids defer or take a gap year, or?
It's interesting because people aren't really saying too much in terms of, so I'm obviously part of, the National Association for College Counseling, and, have my finger on the pulse of sort of everything that's happening and as the landscape is changing. What I do know is that, everybody's in the same boat at this point across the country. So it's almost like time has stopped. So from a recruiting standpoint, it's stopped. I was a little bit anxious in the beginning because I thought, well, if things are going on in the middle of the country where the virus isn't as rampant and the coasts are being shut down, are they still doing, their camps? Are they still taking SATs or ACTs or preparation? And the answer is no. Everybody's in the same boat that we are. And I think that, no one is saying anything yet, but what I think is going to happen is I think that they're going to try to resume normal as quickly as possible. So in the fall, I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to start school. I think that some kids may defer a year, especially if it's about affordability. So, if you were accepted to Cornell, but you're playing full boat, I don't know that I would send my kid back to Cornell and spend $70,000 when they could stay home and take courses at a community college for the first semester, and save that money. But, I think it's going to be a personal decision, and it's going to be based on the college. Like, I read an article from James Madison this morning saying that, they're trying to look at, okay, well, we have a campus of 20,000 kids. Like, how do we keep them safe? And So I think, there's a lot of different models that are being discussed where like freshmen and sophomores might return to campus, where juniors and seniors might be online because they've already taken their labs and all of the required courses.
Right.
So I think it's going to be different everywhere. In terms of the testing, ACT is still on. They haven't canceled any of their summer tests. So as of right now, ACT sort of, planning for the regular testing. I personally think there's too much money tied up in College Board and ACT to do away with those tests. Schools like Cornell and Villanova and some of the UC schools have said, hey, we're going to go test optional next year. I don't know that that's going to make things easier for kids. I think that if anything, it might make things a little bit more difficult. Certainly, a school like Penn State, who receives, a crazy amount of applications could never scan those applications coming in just because of the numbers. There's just too many to read. So they could never do away with a test score. So I'm telling all of my juniors right now, as I'm having junior meetings with them and their parents, to plan for business as usual. Take this time right now to prep as much as you possibly can. Do practice tests once every week. Make sure that when the testing resumes that you're ready to go and that you've got this under your belt, because the more prepared you are, the better off you're going to be. There will be test scores in some capacity somewhere along the way. And I think that, there are going to be kids that are going to submit the scores, even if they are traditionally a test optional school, right? So
Right.
like Boston University might say, hey, we're test optional, but there's going to be kids who still have that 1450 or 1500, score on their SAT. And those people are going to be in the same pool in terms of competitiveness. So I always advocate for my kids to be as competitive as they possibly can on paper, and you put your best foot forward. If you're a stellar a kid with a 5-page resume and you don't have great test scores, well, then this is going to be a good thing for you, because you're going to have that great GPA and that great resume, and you're going to be able to not submit something that makes you look a little bit on the a weakness. So that's how I think it could play out in either direction.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah.
On mute still.
You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so happy to be here. Sorry, I'm like really a newbie with this sort of stuff. My kids are all like pros, and this is actually my first time doing this. So just bear with me. Hope you can hear me. I'm just curious about does Bergen Catholic, does your guidance department ever work with outside college admission consultants? Is that not necessary, or because I know a lot of families they do, and just wondering. But I've also heard how strong the guidance program at Bergen Catholic is. So I'm just kind of curious. I mean, my son's he's a freshman, class of 24, so we still have a little bit of time, but
Right.
Just kind of curious, and I wanted to pop on
So
tonight just to learn a little bit more.
Right. So the purpose of starting this program, I've been a private college counselor for 15 years. So that was what I did after I was a guidance counselor. And then as a side business, I worked as a college consultant. And so I've had a business where I take, 12 to 15 kids a year. Obviously now it's on the lower end of things. So I usually will take on like 8 to 10 kids from all over Bergen County, mostly kids that actually come from private schools. So, so my finger is really on the pulse of what's going on kind of peripherally. So kids that are coming out of the academies, kids that are coming from Horace Mann, or Regis or things like that, where they do have very, very strong college counseling programs as well. And I work with them just because their parents are looking for a little bit more detail, a little bit more attention. I won't tell you that there are students in the class that don't have college counselors. I would say that since this program has really been established and well established, and our results are so good, that there's probably a smaller percentage of students who are actually feeling the need to do that. Certainly, I think with any program, it doesn't matter how strong or how much support is there. Some parents are going to feel that they want to reach out for that. But the purpose of developing this program was to give you the opportunity to have the same feel as having a private college counselor, but not having to pay for it outside of your Bergen Catholic tuition. So the idea is that this is built into what you're paying for. And that's what I'm here to do, is to hold your hand, assist you along the way, and make sure that you feel as though you're getting that attention.
And what is the student counselor ratio, guidance counselor ratio?
So we have 4 guidance counselors who are helping kids essentially through the first, essentially they're with you all 4 years. But the college counseling department is myself and Vito Campanile, who is also the football coach. So we are working primarily doing everything having to do with college. So I do all of the night events. I do all of the parent seminars. I do a lot of travel and a lot of the working with, college admissions professionals and things like that. So a lot of my job is mostly, I would say, 60% administrative and then 40% student-based. So I'm overseeing what the counselors are doing with the students in the classroom in terms of college counseling. So their role is twofold. They do part of the college counseling process, which is the letters of recommendation, and processing the application senior year. But in terms of advisement, that comes all through my department. So if you're looking at strategic planning in terms of what kinds of schools we should be looking at, in terms of athletics and finding that match, that all comes through me. And you can schedule a consultation with me at any time. Freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, you will definitely mandatorily start meeting with me. But my door is always open. So kids pop in for all sorts of things. I also handle, the free ACT, SAT prep that we offer at Bergen. So kids are coming in, kind of inquiring about that. That gives me the opportunity to sort of just stay involved and see kids, frequently. I will tell you that there's kids that, as freshmen that I see, multiple times a year. And then there's freshmen who will never come see me. But my office is in the library. I work very closely with the admissions team. There's a lot of overlap there. So kids that are coming in and seeing Matt and Billy in admissions and enrollment, they see me as well because I'm there. So, there's a lot of good things that are going on in both departments. And it's, like I said, we work very much in tandem with one another. So the guidance counselors and I are always in touch, about kids and what makes the most sense. Because my overall goal is for the boys to get into obviously the best colleges that they can. And I want to make sure that all of the planning that's happening is leading them up to that point.
Thank you.
Sure.
God bless you.
Thank you. Somebody noticed.
All right. Any other questions? Looks like, do we have anything in the chat?
No, I don't, but you can make my email available to everybody. So if anybody has any personal questions that they don't want to ask on the screen, or, you have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Beth. And her email is in the chat right now. So ewalter@bergencatholic.org if you have any follow-up questions. And then tomorrow night, we are going to be doing a guidance department specific coffee series if you want to tune into that as well. So we thank everyone for joining. As always, reach out via email if you have any questions. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.